Well, welcome everybody, and thank you all very, very much for being here. We do this on an annual basis, kind of present where we've been, where we're going kind of thing, so that it is the state of the city going forward. And I was coming back, it was Valentine's Day, we were coming back from a restaurant, and we had the most beautiful sunset over El Toro. And you got to always start a presentation about Morgan Hill by talking about El Toro, right? Our mountain. It's the symbol, so you got to use it. So it was just beautiful. So I decided a little bit different picture of Morgan Hill this year. And where do you go to get that? Susan Brazelton. Absolutely. Just a gorgeous picture, Susan. Thank you for letting me use that this evening. What we're going to talk about today is, tonight, is a few recognitions, and then we'll do some highlights from the previous year. We're not going to go into a great deal of detail. I usually do go into more detail on what we've done during the past year, but I thought the really concentration point for this evening would be to tell you where we're going in the coming year. We've gone through our standard process of toward the end of January, taking a day and a half to get together as a Morgan Hill City Council and decide what our priorities are for the year and what we're going to do. So that's what I'm going to spend the most of my time talking to you about this evening. But we'll start with recognitions, and I have to start always with recognizing my wife. And there you go. And then right after my wife is my fellow council members, and there we are. Gordon Siebert on the right side is not with us this evening. He had an obligation with his wife that he could not get out of this evening, but he sends his best, and everybody else is here, and thank you for being here, guys. Next is our city manager, Mr. Steve Reimer. We are just totally helpless without our staff, and I'll be talking a lot about that later on this evening. Here's somebody that maybe you don't recognize. That's because we don't recognize them yet either. That is our new city attorney that we are in the process of recruiting. The city attorney and the city manager both report directly to the city council, and so they kind of represent the entire staff to us. We will be interviewing for city attorney candidates, some city attorney candidates on Monday. We also recognize all our commissions. We have a very, very busy planning commission. We'll talk about what they're working on as we go through this. We have our Parks and Recreation Commission, our Youth Action Council, our Library, Culture, and Arts Commission, and over the last 2.5 years or so, we've been updating our general plan. I'll be talking about that later, but we have a general plan advisory committee that's been working with us very closely. Then down in the corner, we have something that still is in existence. It's called the Corporation Yard Commission. It's a joint commission between us and the Morgan Hill Unified School District that oversees things that are going on in the corporation yard, and maybe we're going to be talking to the school district, maybe we can do some other things as well going forward. So that commission is still very much in existence, and Roger Knopf is here with us this evening. He's the chair of that commission. Maureen Tobin, I think everybody knows Maureen Tobin, our communications and engagement manager. And on the right is Harjat Sangha. And Harjat and Maureen are both our 2 employees of the year. They were recognized in November. They were recognized in November, and I like to put their faces up, not just because they're so special, but because they are just 2 examples out of 180 of our outstanding staff that we have. So they are kind of representative of the entire staff, all the teammates that work together. And when I say 180, those are just the employees of the city of Morgan Hill. And I do not at all want to leave out our teammates both at CAL FIRE, who is our contractor to man our fire department. Chief is with us this evening, and the YMCA, who we're in very close partnership in terms of running the Centennial Recreation Center. Basically, they're all teammates. They all work together. They all make this whole thing work wonderfully well. We also have a lot of partnerships, just with all the various agencies, the people that represent us in Sacramento, Zoe, who represents us in Washington, D.C., the Chamber of Commerce, our sister city committee, the League of California Cities. You can see Mike Wasserman is our county supervisor. We work very closely with him. Put Gilroy on there because we are South County and we do a lot of things together regionally with Gilroy as well. So we have a lot of people to recognize. But if you weren't in one of those groups that I have recognized, I'd like to recognize you again for just being here this evening, being part of finding out what's going on in Morgan Hill, being engaged in what's going on in the community. We really appreciate everybody for being here. So let's go through a few highlights of what's been going on in the city of Morgan Hill, not necessarily the calendar year, but going on up until now. And you got to talk about the downtown because that is really, really coming together. We're getting there. We are supposed to have been there already, but we got about another month to go, and we will be there totally. And you can see the kinds of things that are going on in the downtown. We started that pop-up park at the corner of 3rd and Monterey, and that was an overnight sensation. The community just adored that pop-up park. And so you know that that corner is going to get developed, and so we're going to move it. And we have a probable location of where we're going to move it. You might have seen on the old South Valley Bike Shop that it's going to be scraped pretty soon. It's going to be demolished. And so if that becomes an empty lot, we're going to talk further with Dan McCraney and see if we can use that lot for the pop-up park for the interim until he develops that property. So thank you, Dan, for being able to discuss that with us. Appreciate it. Another thing that we did downtown is wrap lights around all the trees. And that was kind of an overnight sensation as well. Everybody just loved that. Why haven't we done that years ago? That doesn't cost very much money. That was just great, and everybody embraces that. We've recently, through a grant from the Super Bowl host committee and Kaboom organization, been able to put in that crosswalk at Dunn and Monterey. And then they also gave us some directional signage. And we went to our Youth Action Council and said, what kind of unique kinds of directions should we be giving to people? Well, they might want to go have a whole lot of fun. They might want to find some scrumptiousness. So I thought those were really innovative and creative kind of things that make our community kind of just a little more vibrant and alive. Then we have some of the other art that we put in up in the upper left hand. So things are looking real good for the downtown. Like I say, about a month away from completion, got a little bit to go. In talking about what we've accomplished, several years ago, the governor came and told us we're not going to have a redevelopment agency anymore, and that all the properties that we had bought as a redevelopment agency needed to be put on the auction block and kind of gotten rid of. And we started out working with other parties that were in partnership in terms of where the funds go when you don't have a redevelopment agency. Started working on exactly how we were going to do that. Got off to a little bit of a rocky start, but over time, everybody kind of came together and said, we want those properties to go in a way that really corresponds to what you're planning to do with the future of the downtown, what your downtown specific plan kind of puts on the roadmap for you. And we were able to work out, and now all 4 of those sites, Site 1 is the Granada Theater and the downtown mall next to it. You know probably, is driving down Monterey, that is under, the Granada Theater is under revitalization right now. And when that gets done, hopefully very soon thereafter, the downtown mall will be scraped and a boutique hotel and other facilities put in there. Site number 2 is kind of on hold right now. That's where the Tryst is, and the men's store as well. The men's store is going to move across the street, but site number 4 is where the pop-up park is now. That's going to become a couple of restaurants. And site number 3 is down right across the street from the railroad station, and that's going to be a mixed-use kind of thing with retail and housing, really as part of our downtown plan. So we are very thinking that this is kind of a highlight, because we did get off to kind of a rocky start, and now everything's kind of come together and going in the direction that we want it to go. We think this is something that we did, and we're kind of proud of the fact that we did it. It didn't work, but we know it didn't work because we tried it, and we wouldn't have known that it didn't work unless we'd have tried it. And that was closing down one lane of Monterey through the downtown and seeing if we could do a traffic calming kind of thing, make it more pedestrian friendly and those kind of things. So coming out of that, we decided, no, it didn't work. We have to go back to 2 lanes in both directions, but we've already started doing a lot of things in terms of how do you calm traffic even though you have the 2 lanes. And as we complete the downtown projects that are going on, we will be concentrating on making sure that traffic calming kinds of things are enforced and that we get what we want to get in that regard. Conserving water. Now, this is something that we, the City Council, can't take any credit for. Really, we thank all of you, the residents of Morgan Hill, who got the message, saw that we were in a severe drought, saw that it was a need to really cut back and set all kinds of records as the leading city within Santa Clara County in terms of the percentage of savings that you have accomplished. So we really, really thank you for that and salute you, our residents, who help us, not just in this is just one example of how our residents come together and help us out when we have problems like that we need to solve. Okay, back in April, we had decided at our goal-setting retreat at the beginning of 2015, we decided that we needed to get a real good handle on exactly what needs we had for our infrastructure. What would it take to fix every single pothole in town? What would it take to get all the right equipment for water and sewer and stormwater and all those kind of things? And what would it take to replace equipment that's wearing out here, there, and everywhere? Things like the artificial turf out at the outdoor recreation center and everything else. So in April, we were able to pull together a very comprehensive report showing what our infrastructure needs were and what it would take financially to maintain them going forward. And that was kind of step 1 of a multiple step thing that we're trying to accomplish, and I'll be talking more about. The second step really happened just recently in December, when we contracted with a survey firm, Godby and Associates, a very well-known, well-respected survey firm, and went out to the residents of Morgan Hill and surveyed them on their impressions in terms of what was important to them in terms of the infrastructure and what needs to be replaced. Some of the first questions ask you, what do you think of Morgan Hill? Is it a great place to live? 92.2%, that's the 92.2%, said that they felt that Morgan Hill is a great place to live, and that kind of makes us feel real good. I could spend 2 hours telling you the results of that survey and kind of the impressions that they leave and where we're going. I'm not going to do that tonight, because you're going to see later on in my presentation that the work plan is really to do that. And Maureen will be leading efforts to have more and more conversations that refine down what are our infrastructure needs, what do they cost, and what are we willing to do to meet those needs. And so that is an ongoing effort that'll be going forward. We renamed the Aquatic Center for Dennis Kennedy, put his name in the title of the Aquatic Center. As you know, the Community and Cultural Center, the Outdoor Sports Complex, the Indoor Recreation Center, the Centennial Recreation Center, all sprang out of efforts that he did in a visioning effort in the mid-90s. And all those things came to fruition at his kind of leadership. He led that entire effort. And he's an ardent swimmer, a very ardent swimmer. And so always the Aquatic Center was the top of his priority list. And he went along with doing the community center first because that was the will of the community, but he did get the Aquatic Center done second, and it was just a love of his, still is, and so we thought it very fitting and proper to put his name on it. Public safety is always number one priority within the city of Morgan Hill. I think it is in most cities, and wanted to kind of show you some of the things that we're doing. The Chief Swing gave me this chart. It's not really bright, but what it shows is a gal that works in our dispatch center, and she's working with all new equipment. We have refurbished our equipment within the dispatch center over at the police station, and I'm going to be talking a little bit later about some of the capabilities that it has that have never been there before. But we are ready for the kind of the 22nd century. Things are going forward, and we have technology in place, a lot of new technology in place. So when we talk about public safety, we talk about a lot of different things. And I also asked Chief Whitmer for some photos from the fire department so we could talk about the fire department and what they do. And he gave me a bunch of photographs, and I decided this one was represented because this is public safety too. This is teaching the kids. This is our fire marshal out there teaching the kids, you know, how to do things to be safe and that kind of thing. So public safety crosses a lot of different boundaries, and you'll find out later on as we go through our new things that we are spending a lot of time looking at how do you get innovative in public safety? How do you make the community safer? Not necessarily by hiring more police or more fire, but by doing innovative kind of things. We always, once a month, we have the opportunity to have our Youth Action Council kids, a couple of them every month, and they rotate around, come to us and present what they call the asset of the month. Our community embraces 41 developmental assets, the assets that kids need to be successful. And so we learn as a council, and as the people that come to the council meetings get to hear the kids themselves present not only what the asset of the month is, but another asset, because there are 41 of them, so they always have a complimentary one, and then they either do a little skit or ask us some questions or do something to kind of reinforce the whole thing. And so this month's asset for the 41 developmental asset is youth as resources. And there they are. Now, I told you that we have 180 employees in the city, and I got them all together for this picture. But when we had our retreat, we talked about what were the highlights of the year for each of us, and all of us on the council agreed that our staff, just as a whole, was a highlight. We just want to recognize that. Communication is a two-way street. Communication is something that, with Maureen's efforts this past year, some of the efforts, you know, in terms of getting a survey done and those kinds of things, we feel that we made really, really good strides forward in terms of communication. But it's a two-way street. We always know, that communications could be better. And we have a few things from last year that we think we didn't do well enough. We'll be talking a little bit more later about what we're doing about communications going forward. But we're always going to put more emphasis in communication because I think it always can improve. Okay, when we got together, we talked about how big are the rocks that we're going to put into our backlog of things that we have to accomplish. And are they really rocks or are they pebbles? And if they're just little pebbles, yeah, we don't want to worry about them. We have too many of the big rocks to worry about. So we had to, through the couple of days that we were meeting, we had to keep our focus on the rocks and not worry about the pebbles. And this is what we came up with. It was on your chair. You have a copy of it. This is what it is. This is the only word chart I hope I have to show tonight. But there's 44 rocks that we put on our list, and we put them into 5 different categories. And what I'm going to spend the rest of the presentation doing is taking you through all 44 of those things, because that's really where we're going in the future, at least, and concentrating on for this year. We start with planning our community. This is putting plans together, okay? And putting strategies together and those kinds of things. This is not implementing, this is not actually doing, this is the preparation steps and getting ready for things. And we've been working on this for, as I said, a couple of years already. 2035 general plan. Every 10 years, the city is required to update their general plan. And the general plan is kind of the roadmap into the future. How big are you going to be? Where are you going to put different kinds of housing? How are you going to grow? Where are you going to grow? There's different elements to it. Even noise is an element. So we've been working on that for a couple of years. But in conjunction with that, we want to update our Residential Development Control System, RDCS. You'll hear people from the city always using the term RDCS. What does it mean? Back in 1977, through an initiative process, the voters elected to implement growth control within the city of Morgan Hill. It's a system whereby you set a target population and then figure out how to grow toward that target population. Currently, under our growth control or RDCS measure, the population cap is 48,000 in the year 2020. Okay, so as we get closer and closer to 2020, we got to figure out how we're going to grow after 2020, and the general plan update is an opportunity to do that. So we're combining our update to the Residential Development Control System, which is voter initiated, so it has to be voter approved. We'll be having it on the ballot in November. What we're suggesting as the update to the Residential Development Control System. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the general plan. And then, at the same time, we're also looking at the zoning code and completely updating the zoning code as well. The general plan says, what goes where within the community, and then the zoning code itself says what are the restrictions on the different types of, residential control and those kinds of things. So we've got a huge effort undergoing to get all 3 of these things done this coming year, and it's a huge emphasis for us. You'll notice that in the lower left corner of every slide is a corresponding number on your chart. So you have a little thing you can take home and know what the city's doing. I love this chart, and it's exactly what it implies, right? What's that in the upper left-hand corner? It's a blueprint. Oh, yeah. It's a blueprint, and what's on the right? That's economic development, right? Boosting the economy. What can we do? How can we write a blueprint in terms of how we're going to do economic development? And Edith and John are working on that, kicking off the effort very soon. We've got, again, community support for that. We've got volunteers from the community that are going to help them in terms of doing that. So that's great. We have a parks and bike trails and walking trails master plan as well. And that hasn't been updated for quite a while, so it's in the process of being updated now. Just recently, what was it, in the end of January, we had a workshop on that where we were getting input. but this is just laying out throughout the entire system where are the bike trails, where are the walking trails, and where are the parks, and how should we be upgrading the parks, and we'll talk about some of the parks that we're doing. I've really already talked about this a little bit, but I said that we wanted a public safety overall strategy for public safety that wasn't necessarily based on traditional kinds of things. A lot of people quote things like, how many officers do you have per 1,000 people? Those kind of statistics, we're trying to figure out how to make the community safer by getting everybody involved, by doing community policing, by different kinds of things that we can do with youth within the community and those kind of things. So that'll all be part of this overall grand strategy for public safety across everything, not just our police department and our fire department, but across everything within the city. This is an area, you can see at the top of this chart that it's Butterfield Boulevard, and on the bottom of the chart is Monterey and Jarvis. So that's a big vacant lot. It's probably the biggest vacant lot within the city limits of the city of Morgan Hill. And it's owned by a company called M-West. And they have recently gotten approval from the city council to construct some apartments within that, rental apartments. We have had a need for a long time to get rental apartments within the city, more affordable rental of kinds of apartments. But this is a schematic that they've submitted to us several months ago, but we're going to work with them very closely in terms of getting this to be a master plan that everybody agrees with as to how it should be laid out and what's going to be where, and are we going to have parks within it and those kind of things. So that's a master plan. There's 8 other master plan kinds of activities going on. I'll go over them real quickly, but community development funding. We have a contract looking at, but the way our community development department is funded is by fees. Okay. So we're studying the fees. Are they adequate? They have not been updated for many years, so should we be updating them now? And so that study is going on. We have water, sewer, and rainwater, stormwater planning going on, almost always. The station area plan is, you know where the station is, the train station. It's that train station is kind of the transportation hub for the city of Morgan Hill. And east of that is the parking lot that is owned jointly by the successor agency to the redevelopment agency and the VTA. And so what is the optimal use of that to accommodate the transportation center that the station kind of represents, and how should we do that? Parking, we have a parking study underway. Even though our parking garage isn't even open yet, we're studying what other parking needs do we need for downtown, where does it need to be, those kinds of things. We'll have that completed fairly soon. At the beginning of the year, we had to bring in some people to run the administrative part of our affordable housing program. And that was something that we had to do because the contractor that we were dealing with went out of business, so we had to bring in people to do that. So we want to look at the long-term consequence of that and what's the best way to manage. Should we be keeping the people that we have on now, or should we be contracting somewhere else? We're looking at that. The one that's probably the most important on this chart, and this goes back a little bit to the blueprint for economic development, is a telecommunications master plan. How do we meet the needs of companies that are going to come in here and absolutely have to have the really broadband kinds of transfer rates and those kinds of things? Because we don't have that capability now, and we're going to need to have it to attract the companies and so forth that we need to attract. So that's very important. The water, we've done every 5 years, we have to do a water sourcing kind of plan, and we've recently completed that. And we also have a strategy for our police department that was written 5 years ago. And so since it's 5 years old, it's a kind of a regular cycle to review it and see if it's still relevant, needs update someplace, and those kind of things. So you can see just a whole bunch of planning activities, master plan strategies going on within the city that are going to lead in the future to implementing other things. I think the last one in the plan is the plans to expand the library. This is our library with bumps on it, to the left, to the front, and to the back. And that our library was designed originally. We wanted to build a bigger library, but we couldn't afford to do it, so we designed it in a way that it could be expanded. And we're working with some architects that have done some conceptual layouts, but we want to take the next step and start into a real design process for the library. Developing our community. Now, this is taking these plans and everything else and turning it into shoveling dirt and those kinds of things. This is probably the number one thing right now is our plans for sports, recreation, and leisure activities expanded near where the outdoor sports complex and the aquatic centers are in the southeast area of the city. You can see, looking over the outdoor sports complex, you can see the area that we're focusing on for those activities. And the layout down there, the red line that is on the left of the thing going up and to the right is Tennant Avenue. So just to orient you. And the areas that are in yellow are the areas that we want to rezone and bring into the city as sports, recreation, and leisure. One of those sites, the one down kind of toward the bottom on the left, is the site that the city has bought for the development of baseball or softball fields. So that is one lot that we will be doing sports kinds of facilities on. And there is interest in a lot of the other properties, but until we get it into the city and we get that kind of zoning put on it, things are waiting on that. Now, to bring properties into the city, you have to go to an independent committee called the Local Area Formation Commission and get their blessing to do so. And we're going to go and do that on March 11th, so that's coming up pretty soon. This has been a very intensive effort, and it's intensive in effort in combination with the implementation of our citywide agricultural mitigation program. Because as we convert those sports, recreation, and leisure fields into sports, recreation, and leisure, we want to have them contribute to the preservation of agriculture, active, real agriculture elsewhere in the southeastern area of the city. We have passed, we're one of 9 cities that has passed an agricultural mitigation program. Only 9 cities in the state have done that, and we've done that, and we're working very actively to get it implemented and get it supported. So, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the sports, recreation, and leisure. Parks. These are downtown parks. The one on the upper right is by the railroad station. You know where the parking lot is, just to the south of the railroad station? We're going to take about 65% of those parking spaces and convert it into a downtown park. And that'll have a lot of features for the kids to play on and those kind of things. And then more like the hiking kinds of parks or passive kind of parks. The road that you see the little brown bridge. That is the bridge over the creek on 3rd Street that goes up Nob Hill. So you see that if you go up, and there's a little parking lot there that's used for Ladera quite a bit. To the right of that is a whole open kind of space area right now that's just ripe for becoming a park. We own that land, and we can do that. And then if you go up 3rd Street and turn left, there's a road up to a big water tank right at the top of Nob Hill. Well, why not make that a trail and have the ability to hike that? And actually, you can see that it comes, if you go around the water tank from 3rd Street, you can walk down that little arrow thing and actually get out to 4th Street. So that'll be an active thing. Here's the view you see from the top of the hill. And so we're working on implementing that this year. Hopefully get those open this year. This is 2 of the sites, and we're emphasizing these 2 sites because they're actively in the process of doing things right now. And we want to make sure that they get done right. One is the Granada Theater, followed by the downtown mall. But the Granada Theater is being done right now, and then hopefully when that gets done, they'll start on the demolition of the downtown mall and the construction of the boutique hotel. Then at the bottom are the 2 restaurants that are going in at the corner of 3rd and Monterey. So we want to monitor those and make sure those go properly. There's a couple of different housing projects. Number 21 on the list, or the urban housing community, is very much a tentative project right now, kind of in the development stage, so I don't really have any pictures to show you that. That's at the corner of Monterey and Biseglia, on the east side of Monterey and north side of Biseglia. But this is 3 different sites. And what are the 3 sites? Well, the top on the left is currently a very empty building that once upon a time was the St. Catherine's Parish Hall. Right under that is, across the street, across Monterey Street, I know some of you will remember the original location for Super Taqueria. That's where Super Taqueria used to be, and it's been vacant ever since it was torn down quite a few years ago. And then the 3rd site, you'll remember John Carlo's restaurant, down Monterey quite a way. And the site, and then you see what they're going to become on the right. So those are very exciting projects. The housing at the Giancarlo site, these all have names, but I haven't memorized the names. But the site there will also have housing for foster kids that are coming out of foster care, that are turning 18 and have to go through a transition process, and they need some place to live where they can hopefully do well and thrive, and we can get them jobs and those kind of things and be successful. Carl Biarchi, our Public Works Manager, has a huge workload in front of him in terms of building a lot of the sewer and a lot of the wastewater and water projects throughout the city. He's got a litany of projects that need to be built last year, or next year, in the coming year. And then we have, again, the community getting involved. And the community is really driving this one, the accessible playground, inclusive playground, has be overlaid in community park. And they're doing we're trying to help them with the design, and money has to be raised to pay for it. They're doing drives for that. We want to help with that if we can. We want to be as supportive of that effort as we can possibly be. And then we have the completion, the next month of the downtown to get it completed. That is definitely, in terms of what's going on, it's a little bit overdue, so we're a little bit trying to hurry it up and finally get there. But the parking garage is all painted now, ready to go. The artwork that's going to go in the garage exists. It's up with the artist right now, but it exists and it's ready to be put on there. And there's just some cleanup kinds of things we have to do on 3rd Street, 4th Street, and Monterey, where things are roped off right now. The artwork has been a little bit controversial, especially the tarantula. So my wife thought that this was a very appropriate quote to signify that diversity of opinion about a work of art shows that the work is new, complex, and vital. So it has been that. It has been a diverse opinion about it. But I think when it gets mounted up there and you see it lit up at night, you're going to really fall in love with it. Okay, the next area is enhancing our services. And one of the things we're going to do is go to a 2-year budget, right away, right off the top. We're enhancing our services by going to a 2-year budget. We think a 2-year budget cycle can work, and we think that all the principles that we use now for a very successful sustainable budget strategy that we call it can be applied over a 2-year period. And so we're gonna give that a go, and we'll of course see if it works, and if it doesn't work, we have ways to step back and make it work. But that's going to be exciting. A couple things we're doing. We talked about community development, how it gets funded, and making sure that we have the fees set right so that we can fully fund it. But we also are always looking at better customer service. How do we serve our customers who are developers and need our guidance and so forth better? So we are undergoing a review by an outside consultant of our community development services to see what they can recommend in terms of improving our service. Another thing that we're doing within development is Track It. It's the name of a software package, and it's permitting kinds of software that can be used to, what you're looking to do is just streamline things, making more efficient, upping the productivity of the planners and those kind of things. And so we went through a process to select this software as the what could do that the best for us. Downtown needs to be, it's spruced up, right? It's beautiful. What happens if we don't do anything to make sure it stays that way? So we've got to get plans in place to make sure we have adequate and the right kinds of maintenance going on to take care of our downtown. And that's an emphasis. I can't believe this when I was told that we have to renew our contract with CAL FIRE, because it seems like we just started last year to me, but apparently we're 4.5 years into our contract, and it's 4 years into our contract, and it expires in 4.5 years. But we've had just a fantastic partnership with the CAL FIRE, and so we need to keep that going, and we will. There's your outdoor sports complex again, and now the focus is right on the outdoor sports complex itself. You may know it is now run under contract by Morgan Hill Youth Sports Alliance. They do everything. And we want to look at that and look at what we're doing at the Indoor Recreation Center, the Centennial Recreation Center, in conjunction with the YMCA, and see if a lot of those things could be applied to the outdoor sports center as well. In other words, run it as a partnership with the Youth Sports Alliance and have city participation along with them for the things that we're good at versus the things that they're better at, and how do you optimize the whole thing. So we're looking at that. City attorney, as I said, we're going to interview some candidates on Monday, but we're going to get an outstanding city attorney. We need an outstanding city attorney, and we will get one. I've already talked a lot about communications and the need to always be improving it. But I also talked about the fact that we did a comprehensive analysis of what our infrastructure needs are, and we did a community survey of what they could do to support those kinds of things. So having those results of knowing what needs to be done, of getting a statistically valid survey done of what people are willing to do. Now we want to kind of drill down and see through a engagement process with the community exactly what should go forward, if anything. We're not committed to doing anything, but if anything, like a ballot measure, should be put forward. If it is a ballot measure, how should it be constructed, and those kind of things. So that's a huge community outreach to understand the priorities of the community in terms of what needs to be done to totally fund the infrastructure, to implement the public safety plan, because public safety is always at the top, and to optimize the services of the city to the community. That's really what we're looking forward to doing. A couple of other things in terms of communications. What Maureen has done so far is fantastic, but we want to do more. If there's more things that we could do with social media, we continually look at our website. I keep forgetting that everything is on our website. I got to keep remembering that. What we can do with surveys or mailers, we have our water bill. We have the ability to have sessions that are interactive, town hall kinds of meetings, television. We have our community access channel that we can use for communications. I have about every month and a half, I have a coffee with the mayor. I go down and have coffee with the seniors about once a month. So those kinds of things, all communication vehicles. We want to see if there's more that aren't even on this chart that we should be doing. And then the other thing we want to do, the number 35 thing that's on there, is we don't think we've done a good enough job of explaining some of the things that we're doing. We don't think that when we make a decision, why did we make the decision? How do we communicate to you why we made it and why we think it's the best thing for the community? So we want to put some emphasis on maybe explaining ourselves a little better and making the communications about that a little bit simpler and more digestible, not using so many acronyms. I think the next chart I'm going to use a whole bunch of acronyms, so probably not a good example. I probably am. The last area that we talked about, we have several things in this one, are regional initiatives. You can't survive these days without really being part of the region that you're in and participating actively and being kind of taking leadership positions and those kind of things, and we've been doing that. One of the things that we're very on the front end of is the community choice energy thing. This is the ability to take your energy source away from PG&E and find greener sources for that energy, and just through finding the greener sources, really cut down on carbon emissions and those kind of things. And it's 11 different communities within Santa Clara County. Every one of those communities that are listed except Gilroy have bought into this, but we were the third one. Sunnyvale and Cupertino were the first two, and they've kind of led the charge. They're the ones organizing this. And it looks like Gilroy probably is not going to join it, but they haven't finally decided that. Don't know why, but. And this will give you the choice. You can say, no, I want to stay with PG&E. We think, we hope that it'll actually cost you less to go with the community choice energy approach, but we can't guarantee that. It might cost a little more. And then you do have an option of being even more green, getting more of your service and paying a little bit more for it. These are the acronyms I was worried about. And I just thought you might hear them, so you might want to know what they were about. What I showed you the picture of in the upper right-hand corner with the dispatch terminals. Those terminals are capable of interoperability across the county. Now you say to yourself, well, of course they are. They've always been, haven't they? No, they've never been. They have never been. We have never had interoperability. We've been working for about 15 years across the county on getting to where you can get interoperability. We started buying radios, the beginning of last year, I guess, some of the radios that we're going to need for interoperability. But what the acronyms stand for is the agency is called Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability Agency, and they are going to sponsor the Silicon Valley Regional Communication System. So those are the acronyms that you see there. Last night we had a presentation at our city council meeting by the leader of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Carl Gordino. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group is working that if the Valley Transportation Agency decides to put a transportation tax on the ballot in November, they will run the campaign for that measure. And what they're proposing is a 30-year tax of 1/2 cent sales tax And it's 30 years. It'll raise $6 billion. 1.5 billion, not all of it, 1.5 billion only will go to BART. And the rest will be available around the county on high priority projects. Our project is the Hale Avenue extension. Remember, as we've had this kind of in the plan for a long time, that Hale dead ends into Maine. Why doesn't it go up over the hill and just connect as a western arterial, the way Butterfield is kind of the eastern arterial through the city? We kind of felt that the scaling down to the single lane downtown might have worked if we'd have had that open now. But we definitely need to have this in the future going forward as we grow, and this might be a way for us to get that. And then they'll be spending some of the dollars on light rail, some of the dollars on maybe some Caltrain upgrades, things like that. Kind of thought this had gone away, but no, it hasn't gone away at all. In fact, it's back in force because now they have reprioritized and said Bakersfield not to San Francisco, just to San Jose is the high priority. And they're going to build that first. So we need to get back with them and understand exactly what that means for the city of Morgan Hill. I think they pretty much ruled out being able to move the tracks over to the east side of the freeway so that they will most probably come right through town where the railroad tracks are now. But are they going to be where are the grade separations going to be, and those kind of things? We need to really get with them soon and figure those things out. Now, this is an effort across the county just to say, as you build houses, what is the most water efficient way to do that? And we've done a lot of things with our residential development control system, our growth control system, in the competition for, are you going to get an allocation, doing green things. So we have quite a bit of expertise. I think Tony Yulo is kind of heading up this effort, but it's to get uniform across the county building regulations to save as much water as possible. We are working with, across the county again, Los Altos and Los Altos Hills have already been blessed to become age-friendly cities, and it's a kind of a designation. We're going through a process where Debbie Vasquez, our senior center manager, has had some focus groups of the seniors as to what are their needs, what services can the city give them in addition to what they're doing now. How can we just be as friendly as we possibly can be within our means, of course, to the senior citizen population. And then when you get qualified to do that and you've done certain things, then you get to implement this age-friendly designation. So we're close to that. I told you that we're updating our parks and trails, bike and walking trail master plan. There's also a county master plan for all three of those things. So obviously we've got to coordinate our plan with their plans and make sure that everything's works the same way. That's their hiking trail plan, but they have plans for the others as well. Housing is a huge issue. The affordability of housing and housing people that are homeless. Both of those efforts have about 6 or 7 ongoing efforts. The efforts that we're involved with are kind of sponsored by the county, but I can tell you, I could go every single day to a meeting about affordable housing. There's that many, that's the kind of emphasis that there is on it. And you know, there's different efforts that need to be coordinated and those kind of things. But we are definitely involved in those, both for homeless and for just general affordable housing. So where am I? Yep, that's 44. So that's all 44 of what we're working on this year. We've told you that. But just to kind of summarize where we've been, Morgan Hill is in very good state. The state of the city is, I think, is fantastic. But 44 rocks, heavy rocks that we're lifting, we're working hard to make it even better. And we appreciate everybody that's here and everybody else that helps us so much in helping us to accomplish these things. So with that, here's Susan's beautiful picture again, and I'll entertain any questions you may have. please. That's yes, Susan.
Tarantula going to be put up?
Are we going to display it before it gets put up? What are we doing there? I'll ask Edith. Oh, she's looking at the boss. No, I can't do that. You're on the spot.
Thank you. This is what we know. We know that, can you hear me? I'll take it. Thank you. We know that the tarantula is all completed, as well as the glass, and is ready to be transported. And we're currently making arrangements because it's actually quite heavy and quite large, and they need special equipment and trucks and machinery to just transport it and for us even to receive it. So we're working through all those details right now, and it's looking like sometime around the second week of March, we're working through those details, that it will be arriving. We will work closely with Maureen to make sure that all of you guys know the status of the tarantula. We're hoping to send notices that it's on its way. I think it's going to be spectacular for us to see the installation of this art, so we want to make sure we invite you to come and watch.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Liam.
First of all, congratulations. I think you guys do an absolutely amazing job. This is a great place to live. I'm very happy here. I'm not sure I should worry about this or we should worry about this, but you brought it up, so I'm going to bring it up. This crazy idea of a high-speed train coming through the downtown. I'm not sure this is ever going to happen, but if you look at what we're doing, I'm on the planning commission. We do a lot of work we get a lot of feedback on. We want our city to be a livable city, a walkable city, a safe city. We're really focusing on the downtown. We're building a lot of, we want people to live in the town. Ethan's over here asking how to make it economically viable. You would be absolutely crazy to allow a high-speed train to run through downtown. And I think you just need to think about that and say, if you want to be economically viable, you want this to be the town that it is, that's never going to fly. So you got to build that into your plan somewhere. That's just my opinion. I don't know if people agree or not, but I think it's a really crazy idea. If it's going to come close to Morgan Hill or it has to go down by the freeway, but down the track that's there right now by downtown, really crazy idea.
I appreciate your perspective. Thank you. We need to learn a lot more about it soon. Anything else? Dan?
So I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I heard about an initiative to interconnect the biking and hiking trails throughout downtown Morgan Hill, actually going all the way up to the hills and perhaps even all the way going to Henry Coe. Did I just mishear that, or is that a plan? And if it is, where does that fit here?
Maybe I'll ask Chris to help me, but basically I'm aware that there was this trail around the Bay Area that you could go all around the whole Bay Area that we were supposed to be part of. I don't know what the status of that is.
As the mayor mentioned, we are updating the Trails Master Plan and working with the county. I know with Morgan Hill and how we have our own existing Trails Master Plan. Be happy to show that to you. Actually, have it in the back right here. We're looking to take advantage of those opportunities. There's some that are easier to do because they're open spaces, some that are harder, but there are several different trails outlined through our community that will reach towards some of the county park areas and connect to those trails in the plan that we're working towards, that we're updating. Yep.
Good. So stay on board with the plan. Anything else? Yes.
So there's a plan to have a lot more housing. Everyone is building more housing. That's okay, I don't want. But is there really a plan for more water? What about more schools? You said that you're having more community involvement with the policing. But that's not going to do enough. We need more fire, we need more police, we need more city services. What's the plan?
That is the general plan that we are updating, is how do we do all those things? How do we make everything match?
Then why are we going ahead and allowing all this growth to happen without a plan in
we do have a plan in place, a voter-approved plan in place. It's called the Residential Development Control System. It sets a population cap of 48,000 in the year 2020. That was passed by the voters of the city of Morgan Hill. We are obligated as we make allocations. We are obligated through the current system to make allocations every year. And once you make those allocations, those developers have the right to develop. You can't tell them no. So, I mean, that's what's happening now. We didn't build for about 4.5 years through the economic downturn. We got a backlog of about 1,300 units, and this year 900 of those 1,300 are being built all at the same time. So it does seem like a real big glut of building. In terms of the water, yes, we are very concerned about the water, the drought situation. We are in a stage 2 environment. Stage 3 is where if we get to stage 3, we have to cut off a lot of things that are not very appetizing at all. So that address some of the things that you're concerned about.
Does not feel as a resident that there's buildings are going higher, they're going up faster. I know economic downturn, how to get pulled or put into place, but there was one project where they were going to be putting right across from the small space, bad design. That is being presented.
I think it's a very good design myself. That's what it is. It's right across the street in the old parish hall. And high density downtown is what our downtown specific plan calls for. And that's where we do want to put most of the multifamily going forward, is concentrated towards the transportation, the so-called smart growth approach. You had a question?
Well, this is back to the tarantula. What significance is the tarantula in relation to Morgan Hill?
What relation does it have?
The tarantula, how does it relate to Morgan Hill?
Well, we have an annual tarantula festival held up at Henry Coe Park, and I've never been to it, so I don't know exactly what we celebrate. Dan, do you know more about the? I don't. So we celebrate it once a year up at Henry Coe, and it was originally a spider, but people thought, well, the tarantula has more of a relationship because of the programs at Henry Coe than a spider, so we kind of converted the design over to the tarantula.
I think this would be a lot prettier thing on the side of the building, the picture you have up there.
It'll be beautiful. Anything else? Well, again, thank you all for coming. Oh, Nancy. I don't know where Booksmart's going to move to. Brad wants me to stay with him and stay at Booksmart wherever it may be, but he doesn't know where it's going to be yet, so I don't know if I can do that yet. The candy parlor is a little too small. We had almost 40 people at my last coffee, so that it is building. So. Okay, do we have any refreshments or something? I think we do. Okay. We do have refreshments in the conference room that's out the door and to the left.